Hello, and welcome to the debut episode of Pins and Parchment, where we discuss creative things in a creative way. My name is Zach, and thanks for joining me. Today, I wanted to discuss with you all two movies I saw over the weekend, Thor Ragnarok and Justice League, and the difference in writing quality between the two films. Let me begin by saying the points made in this discussion are subjective and based upon my own personal thoughts of what makes quality writing. Marvel vs. DC Comics has been a debate separating the sides of nerdom and fan culture ever since your grandfather could read the word POW across the front page. Nowadays, both comic stories have taken to the cinema, but there's no secret that there's a significant difference between the two in terms of sales and production quality. While discussing this, I'm also going to be only focusing on the writing, not the drastic scenes, not the film work, nothing along those lines, the actors portraying the characters. I'm only interested in the story of the plot used, especially in these two films that I just saw recently. I'm also only including what is considered the canon DC cinematic universe, which ignores the Dark Knight trilogy, which I enjoyed greatly myself, the Green Lantern movies, and the wonderful 90s Batman films. Anyways, the most recent releases from each franchise has been relatively well received, Thor Ragnarok being the third Thor film and featuring the end of Asgard as he knows it. Justice League features a group of familiar heroes banding together to fight the ultimate evil of random horn guy from hell. Seriously, they said the antagonist's name maybe 20 times in the movie, and I cannot remember it for the life of me. So we have our first major difference between the two films in writing, grounding your audience. In Justice League, we recognize the heroes making up the protag team, but the plot is summoned forth as Mr. Evil for the sake of evil starts collecting artifacts that were failed to be brought up in any previous films, almost as if DC had not planned out the plot of Justice League until its actual production. The first half of Justice League was spent reminding us, the audience, of the events of Batman vs. Superman, which was only welcomed due to the fact that I could not finish the movie in the first place. In comparison, we have the grounding within Thor Ragnarok. The film starts immediately in a new situation, but we know Thor as a character already, and while we don't exactly know what he's doing here, we can assume it has something to do with Asgard based on the context of previous films. In fact, we know the plot, villain, and the heroes of the next Avengers film thanks to the grounding and foreshadowing used in the writing of the Marvel films so far. But back to Thor for now. The plot points within Thor Ragnarok link to previous films, and the antagonist is very personal. While both villains in both films are not mentioned until the respective movies that they arrive in, the execution of each antagonist is drastically different. In Justice League, Mr. Bad Guy shows up, and we are constantly told about how bad he is. He wants to end the world because he is bad. He looks all demon-like because he is bad. He wants to spawn hell because he is bad. This may be due to the fact I have no idea who this villain was, so as lacking context, but it felt as if the film and its writing was done in a way that constantly had to remind us of Mr. Bad Guy, like we would forget him. And honestly, I did. Every time Evil McNasty showed up on the screen, I was reminded of his existence. Minor spoiler warning. Superman later making a complete joke of the guy did not help his forgettable case. In Ragnarok, there does not seem to be this need to remind us that the antagonist is bad or evil, because she feels like a real, rounded character. She has quirks and goals, but she accomplishes them in such a brutal and commanding way. Hela is a round character, and we get subtle tastes at her complexity throughout the movie, rather than one single backstory dump. In some ways, there is sympathy even towards her, not in the way that she's carrying out her ambition, but you truly feel she has been wronged at some point in her story, as if Odin really wasn't in the right for the things he had done to her. The last point I'm going to bring up about the writing of these films is probably the bit I have the least experience with myself in my writing, and that is the humor. And I'd like to end on a positive note, so we're going to talk about Justice League first. It's no secret that DC has always tried to be a bit grittier than Marvel. But if you dig deep enough, you can scavenge the bits of humor the writers attempt to include in the movies, be it about Wonder Woman's cultural differences to industrial London, or another 12 jokes about how rich Batman is. In Justice League, the humor is more of the same, or simply cringeworthy at some points. Plenty more Batman is rich jokes. Not that Tony Stark is excused from such jokes, but at least his responses are witty and narcissistic and a little bit interesting. A lot of the rest of the humor in Justice League was based around the Flash and his inability to think at a normal human rate. Surface level, these are usually just met with awkward silences in the movie, but go a few layers deeper down, and this is not much different than laughing at a disability. I can't say that this is the intended interpretation, in fact, I'm confident it's not, but it reminded me much of some of the humor in Big Bang Theory when the focus zooms in on Sheldon's semi-autistic behavior. I know that they're not intending to make fun of anyone, but it could be seen that way, and flashes at the expense of most of the humor in the writing of Justice League because of this. On the flip side, we have the humor in Ragnarok. Let me repeat by saying I don't write humor, I just know enough to recognize things I enjoy versus things that I don't. Ragnarok is hilarious. There's such a sweet blend of funny moments and thrilling action sequences. Hulk is funny, Thor is funny, Bruce Banner is funny, and it doesn't seem to be focused at the expense of one character over another. Even Loki had his moments in the movie, usually at his own expense, but it all felt deserved rather than pitiful. And I suppose I'll end this train of thought, how I plan on ending most of these, with a suggestion. I'm unaware of copyright on character personalities, but DC had an excellent opportunity, especially in the aspect of humor, with the introduction of Cyborg. I am one of the millions who grew up watching Cyborg with the Teen Titans back in the golden days of Cartoon Network. I wasn't expecting a copy and paste of the Cyborg I knew from my youth, but I was hopeful for an adequate adaptation. Instead, he was corrupted by the overly serious, nitty-gritty environment DC is trying to build their cinematic universe upon. In Justice League, at several points, Cyborg felt so dark and serious that he was near suicidal with his dialogue, not wanting the gifts he was given, so much so that he was threatening his own life. So my suggestion for all this would be as follows: that DC needs more contrasting elements in their writing. If we're serious 100% of the time, it becomes a drag. It takes away from everything. If everything is just dark and depressing, then that's what normal life is, and that's the standard you set. But instead, write in some lightheartedness from time to time. And no, that doesn't mean some profound romantic revelation between characters. That could just be something as simple as going to a diner together and getting lunch. I know Thor likes coffee and smashing cups on the ground. Tony is quick-witted but riddled with flaws he points out in others. Peter Parker is Spider-Man, but he's also just a kid sometimes, and we get to see that. And Hulk is like a big raging fire, as he would put it himself. It is the contrasting moments between humorous humility and action-packed heroics that Marvel seems to get, and DC seems to constantly lack. And that's the note I'd like to end on. So, thank you all for listening. My name is Zach, and I'll catch you on the next podcast episode. Take care.